birthday was last weekend, and it was a wonderful bash picnic.
Good for
Yes.
you.
Quite a few people there.
Well, he's just a baby, you know. He just joined the club.
Right, right. So I got an initiation. So that's for the first 90.
Well,
Wow.
Patty, you've done the same thing within the past few days, right?
I've done no, well, yes, but I went a year beyond. He just turned 90.
Oh my
He's
God.
a baby.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. No. Yes,
Well, I hope us much older people keep you entertained, John.
Thank you. Okay. That's kind of you. Yes. Appreciate it.
I think we missed, you weren't on last month, right, John?
No, he was on last month.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I did
But
miss
Judy-
one, but
Judy and Bill were not on last month because
Yeah,
Correct.
we had doctor's appointments.
Oh, okay.
Physical
I
therapy.
knew I was hoping you went.
No,
You
But-
went to Honolulu for fun, I hope.
well, we did. We had two major tests, and we got excellent reports.
Oh, that's great news. That's
Checking his,
good.
checking the heart valve and the heart, whatever. So he's still there. The
ah,
brain
good.
is working.
Well, we're not sure about that, the brain part.
That's terrific.
Well, when I had my 91st birthday, week before, Marge said, okay, next Friday, we're having your birthday party. Will you be there? And I'll let you know next Friday morning.
Yeah, no certainty.
That's
In fact,
for sure.
There's something
John,
that-
it was so good seeing your kids there. John had two of his adult children there, and I hadn't seen them since they were little. And oh my, yeah,
Very, very nice.
yeah, it was great. So have you written any more books, Bill?
What's that? Oh, well, I finished my last book about 6 months ago, and talking to Jim Madison in our class, he says, well, why don't you write a prequel to your last book? And so I'm kind of working on that thought quite a bit, a prequel to End of the Gods. So I got to keep the gods alive for a while longer if I do this.
So John, what's happened with your most recent book?
I'm working on a book about the Etruscans.
Yeah.
And so I got on this TV show about to find your roots.
Oh, yeah.
And they traced my roots back to the Etruscans. So I'm
How did you get on that? That's fabulous. Good for you.
When was it?
When
when
is
did you
it
do
going
that?
to be broadcast?
oh, I've got a lot of work to do on it. Yeah.
No. You said you were on finding your roots.
Oh, I was just spoofing you, Marge. I'm sorry.
I thought you were. I was always good for believing what guys told me.
Uh-oh.
Well, you know, that program is so good. I think Henry Louis Gates Jr. does a great job, and
Fabulous.
I think it's quite interesting. But you can only go back so far, and to go back to the Etruscans, of course, is impossible. I mean, but it's like going back to the Neanderthals or something like that. I mean, you might have a little bit of that DNA in your system, but yeah, I think it's kind of meaningless, really.
Well, maybe you need to go back to Adam. How's that one?
That could be all right. Yeah.
Well, you know, it was a class of 59
Yes.
Stanford guy that discovered the
That's right.
remains of the Etruscan Empire.
Okay, let me give you the code.
Um,
He
Sheldon
discovered
Briner.
Okay,
did
just
he
a minute. I'll let
discover,
Marge
Terry?
know.
Yeah, Sheldon Briner. He was working for
Marge, Jack Louderbaugh wants in.
I've forgotten one of the first electronics company, and so he
And
had
Carol Wood.
magnetometer, and he was
Are you on yet?
on a vacation in Greece, and he flew back to Naples.
No,
I think
it's.
it was,
I-
and
I'm
he had
talking
his
to her just-
magnetometer on, And when he flew
I see.
over
Okay, very good. Thank you.
northeastern Italy, the thing went
Okay, thank you.
northeastern Italy, the thing went wild. So he contacted an Italian a guy who studied the Etruscans, and they found the original camping grounds of the Etruscans because they built fires, and the heat of the fires changed the magnetism of the earth in those spots, and that's what sent his magnetometer crazy. But he's also made billions finding oil fields and coal fields, and particularly iron deposits. So
That's very interesting about the Etruscans. There are probably lots of magnetic hotspots like that, I bet.
You've got a great group, Patty.
Yeah, she did fine.
We
Yeah,
have a wonderful group. Look at you.
I am proud of you guys. You're so great.
okay, we thought we'd
Manager.
ask
Walter.
all of you if
Oh.
you've ever had any extremely lucky moments in your life, and how that's affected your life.
Well, getting into Stanford was pretty lucky, or I guess. I know I wouldn't get in today, I don't think. And it definitely changed my life, so.
How about living to 91? Is that lucky?
Well, yeah, that is true.
It brings its
I had a-
complications.
I had a lucky experience when I was a teenager. I had never flown on an airplane, and I went to a, I don't know, Rainbow Girls thing or something, and I guessed how many peanuts were in a jar of peanuts that was there or something, and I got a free ride to on a plane to LA, and I had never been on a plane anyway, so that was kind of an experience.
Oh, that-
I don't
Yeah.
think it changed my life, except that it was the first time I was ever on a plane too. So anyway.
Well, at that time, San Francisco Airport was a Quonset hut, wasn't it?
I don't even remember getting on the plane, so who knows? I don't remember. No, I think it was. I've been in worse airplanes at airports than that. But anyway, I don't remember it being
Smaller. When we were at Stanford, we could fly to LA for $10 or something like that. Was that?
probably.
I don't think so. It was fairly expensive. I remember because my parents bought me a ticket. This would be when you guys were juniors. So that year, Terry invited me to the Rose Bowl, and my parents brought me airline tickets for to fly to LA. It was my first airline flight out of San Francisco, and I have a picture of it. The airport at that time was like a single building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably the original one that's there.
that would have been when you guys were 20 and I was 17. So I know exactly when it happened. And I have a picture, so I just ran across it and it's like, oh my God, it looked like some silly little shed. That was San Francisco Airport then.
Yeah.
I flew from there in 50, I guess it was, to Honolulu. It was kind of a big deal.
Wow, yeah, that is a big deal.
People didn't have many cars even. I mean, a lot of cars. So
I think
It's still.
Charlie Kimball and I flew into San Francisco on his plane, a Cessna, behind an airliner. If you think that wasn't an interesting experience.
Wow.
Oh,
A
boy.
little tumultuous. But we had to stay far behind so that the turbulence wasn't too great, and turn off and not go to the main terminal. And that was in about 1952, 3 or 4. We went up to a football game.
Well, I have in answer to Terry's question about a lucky thing that happened that changed your life. A really lucky thing happened to me in 1971. I was offered a job producing political shows for Channel 2.
Mhm.
I didn't apply for a job at Channel 2. I didn't even expect, my reaction to that was, I don't know anything about television. And they just said, we know what you know, and we want you on our staff. Next week, how much do you want to earn? And I was there, I stayed there for 22 years, and it led, I retired at the end of 92, but I stayed on as a freelancer for another 2 or 3 years.
So,
Would you like to be on now?
No, thank you. Yeah, no, it was wonderful then.
And they asked you how much you wanted to earn? That's
And he
pretty-
asked me how much I wanted to earn, and
what'd you say?
the only salary I knew about was that of State Senator Nick Petras and his top aide, which I thought was a job I would like, $14,000 a year. So I said 14,000, and the general manager kind of blanched, and he gulped, and then he said, well, I'll have to get back to you. And then I felt like I'd really blown it. Friday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, I thought, I've got to just bite the bullet and learn that I just blew my job, and I picked up the phone and I answered it, and it was the general manager, Roger Rice, saying, why don't you answer your phone? I've been calling you all week. Why you're here Monday morning, 9 o'clock.
Wow.
Wow.
I know. And it
Very,
was,
very nice. That's a great story. I like to hear good stories like that.
but the New York Times every day is hard. It's sad to read what's going on everywhere.
Yes.
I read it every day too. It's if you want to really learn and get good background and well objectively written, I think the New York Times is fantastic. They have very deep coverage of a lot of what's going on.
I think it's,
I like Paul Krugman today.
he is
You
brilliant.
read Paul Krugman
Mhm.
today?
I haven't read it.
Good article.
How many of you have mastered TikTok?
Oh, I haven't even seen it.
I haven't tried.
Too many other things that are more important.
Wrong
Amen.
generation.
Yeah.
My granddaughter is in Hollywood and she's with her partner, into TikTok. And they have all these followers on their humor of TikTok. So she's kind of carving out a career for herself in Hollywood using TikTok, and which is quite amazing to me, because I don't even know what TikTok is. So.
And if you ever watched it for a minute, you still wouldn't know.
That's what I understand. Yeah. So.
How many of you have websites?
Jack, I do.
We
Well,
do.
my wife does. She has a book blog where she reads about 10 or 12 books a month and then reports them all once a month.
Oh,
That's
Bill
good.
has a
Yeah,
I have a website with all my books on it. Yeah.
yeah, you do.
yeah. Bill has one too for his books. Yeah, Bill Fernandez, Hawaiian author.com.
I've got one for my father's stained glass windows.
Oh,
I
yeah,
told
you
you
did.
about- Yeah, yeah,
You told us about that, Mars. That's so
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's called Huneke Stained Glass, all run together, HUNEKE Stained Glass.
Hmm.
And it's just tells, well, Terry has photographed all of the 1,100 windows that he could
Whoa.
in more than 80 churches in Northern California. And
Oh.
so they are all there, all documented, just beautifully photographed.
Wow.
But in addition, the website now contains the 2 memoirs that I've written, one about my mother, one about my father, as well as all kinds of other documented information about the creation of those windows, including all of the original contracts, which some of them were all just handwritten contracts, going back in those days when my father could barely type on an ancient old typewriter. So it's a very, very well done website.
we just launched a website for me, a second website for the book. And it's just my name, bettyannbruno.com. And Greg and I did it ourselves after we decided we couldn't really go the thousands of dollars that website designers want these days to do a website. So we did it ourselves, and it was a sharp learning curve for Craig, but he did it, and we like it really well. So if you want to go to it. Yeah.
I thought there was one on a local paper in Sonoma. My son lives up in that area, and there was on his, what's that, the something press, Democrat Press or something?
Oh, yeah, there was in Sonoma, Betty Ann. You were this,
The Democratic
you've been in
Press.
that paper a lot.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot about.
Yeah.
She's the Sonoma treasure.
Yeah, and the treasure artist, or was for 2 years. Anyway, that was for the hula thing. That was really nice.
Great.
You know, it's a quiet little town, so there isn't much else to write about.
Betty Ann, you got a big splash on Wikipedia. You know that. A big thing on Wikipedia.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I just got back from being a munchkin in New York. So the festival, it's the oldest Oz festival in the country. And it's done completely by volunteers. And these volunteers, I have never met a community of people where everybody is just going in the same direction. They're all so enthusiastic and so positive, and they were so cute and treated me like, like the queen. I mean, I didn't know my head would get through a doorway when I left. I rewrote the lyrics to a song that's kind of a simple hula, Lahaina Luna, for those of you who know the song. And I made it all about going to the Oz Stravaganza in Chittenango, and then I taught it to them, and they all wore these t-shirts. Chittenango Noka Oi.
Noka Oi, the best.
Line for the song, which means Chittenango's #1. And here's a yellow brick road.
Oh.
Oh boy.
Oh, I love it.
And they were all there, so cute, right below the bandstand where I was teaching. It was in the Central Park. I mean, it was amazing weekend. It was pretty crazy. It was wonderful, really.
Sounds like fun.
It was a lot of fun, and I think I met some people who will be my life. They're my best friends now, aside from but there are people who just love the Wizard of Oz. I mean, have you ever met any Trekkies or Oz fans or any people like that? There's a young costume designer. He's in his early 40s. He has 10 to donate. They have a museum. They're all run by volunteers, so an Oz museum. And this young man has made 10 life-size witches costumes from every production of The Wizard of Oz, from even before the MGM production. There was a movie made in the 20s. He has the witches costume from that. He's made clear through The Wiz, Wicked, everything. On stage, on film, he's made 10 of them. And it's amazing. And there's another guy named John Fricke. He's written 7 books about The Wizard of Oz. And he's kind of the host. I mean, these are incredible people.
I'll have to tell you a funny story about the Wizard of Oz. When the kids were little, we let them watch the movie, The Wizard of Oz. And at that point, I have 5 kids, but at that point I had like the youngest was 2, and that one just scared him, and he had to run up to bed because at the beginning, where the storm and all that goes in, I guess it just frightened him. So that was how he was introduced to it.
I was scared when I saw The Wizard of Oz in the first movie. I mean, the movie that made it nice. And I went to the theater in Topeka, Kansas, and but that witch was terrible. All those goblins, they were
Oh, the flying monkeys.
The monkeys were the worst.
Oh,
Yeah, I remember that. The monkeys were really scary.
They
oh,
were.
yes. I,
Well, you know who handed out the diplomas when I graduated from Beverly Hills High School was, it said Margaret Meserve, but it was Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch. She was on the school board in Beverly Hills.
Orange
Oh,
is
Well,
very
another
sweet.
interesting thing about Wizard of Oz is I was born in 1938. My mother named me Judy. My little class of 30 kids in Crosby, Minnesota, there were 5 Judys.
Dirty.
And for Judy Garland. We were named for Judy Garland.
Yeah.
So if you find,
5 Judys. Oh my goodness.
yeah, it wasn't easy.
Judy, what did your dad want to name you?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I was a surprise, I think, so probably a question mark.
A lot of the Judys that you knew when you were growing up, Judy, were there a lot of Judys in your school, or did you know a lot of other girls named Judy?
In my small town, my last name was Johnson, and there was actually another Judy Johnson,
Oh.
and she followed, and I were together all the way to graduation. And sadly, she was kind of a C student, and I was not a C student. But very often, like the algebra teacher would give me her grade because he couldn't remember which Judy
Which was-
Johnson. And I'd have to go in and say, I think actually I was supposed to get that A. a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had
You
Judy and
remember at Stanford that the band guy who struts around in front of the band was named John Lauderbaugh, and he flunked out, and my parents got his flunk notices.
oh,
When
yeah.
did I get a mean phone call?
oh,
Terrible.
There have been a lot of Lauterbachs around. That's an unusual name, isn't it?
That's right, there aren't many. That's why it was unusual. He might have spelled it differently, I don't know,
That's
but
fun.
they got it anyway.
I have,
Hey, Eisner.
What?
But one thing I
Eisner.
can remember of Miss Stanford Jack was your last name. It was so unusual that it's hard to forget.
Yeah,
So it's a hell of a good name, I tell you that.
well, good. I'm not gonna forget it, I hope.
lots of vowels.
So what did your parents do when they got your flunk out notice?
They called me.
What did they say?
Talk about rant and rave. They told me they weren't gonna pay for my education if I'm gonna do that. And I said, I don't think it was me. Now, I finally, after 20 or 30 minutes, I finally placated them.
okay, well, Betty's given us a really good thought on luck. How about risk? Have any of you ever taken a really serious risk, and how did it turn out?
Well, Bill's got some shark stories. That's about as risky as it can get.
Right.
Tell us, Bill.
Tell about a shark story.
Well, I was out diving with some boys off of Kauai, about a mile, and I saw there was a big shark that came sailing along, and I can still remember its stomach. It was going back and forth, and it gave me a real good look. But then it swam off, and I thought, well, everything was safe, and they had this long line of fish. And as I moved towards shore, I suddenly felt a big tug. And they turned around and they said, "Wait, my gosh, the string I was carrying with all these fish is broken. But by golly, none of the fish are leaving me." So I tied my string together and I started putting the fish back on. And all of a sudden, this great big black thing came spinning around me, just like a buzzsaw, just going around me. I was close enough to some rocks to get my fish and myself inside those rocks, just above, with my head just above water. And what had happened was that shark had come in right behind me and grabbed a couple of the fish I had about 15 fish. Now I was down to 13, and it's seared the line just short of my legs. And for years, I would always have a nightmare that I didn't have any legs anymore.
Oh, God.
But it didn't stop me from going out diving again.
And he met more sharks. That was not the only shark incident, but that's the scariest one I heard. We were at a restaurant for lunch in California, and the waitress proudly gave the fish of the day. And she said, "We have fresh shark today." And Bill almost passed out. He just went, no. I said, "Oh, have you seen a shark on the water?"
Funny.
So he doesn't eat. If they don't eat, he doesn't eat shark, they won't eat him.
Very good philosophy.
Has he ever tested that theory?
I came pretty close.
He's brave, but he's not foolish.
I've heard a lot of Hawaiians do not eat shark because the shark, for many Hawaiians, is what they call an amakua, which is guardian angel of water.
Yeah.
You know, the Hawaiians being ocean-going people, swimming, canoeing, and everything else. The shark is really important. And there is a wonderful story that my aunt used to tell about this bay out on the Big Island, Hawaii Island, that was known for a lot of sharks. And some entrepreneurs, Haole entrepreneurs, made up this shark hunting expedition, and they sold a lot of expensive tickets to the hunters who would come out. And what the plan was, they were going to float the bodies of some cows out in the bay.
Oh boy.
All the sharks. And then these hunters would come and go bang, 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 and they could have a lot of fun just picking them off, right? So the hunters came and they waited, and the bodies of the cows were all floating out in the bay, no sharks. And they waited and they drank more beer because it was kind of, they drank more beer and it got to be noon, they drank more beer. Toasted, it got to be kind of the afternoon, they all got cranky and they started shooting at the cows, you know, to shoot at. So they re-killed all these dead cows. And then they went away, grumbling, demanded their money back. This was a ripoff, blah, blah, blah. What they didn't know, apparently, was that the Hawaiians who lived there had every family had a shark save story, where a shark had helped a drowning kid, or somebody, that the sharks were really the amakua for everybody in this village. And that when somebody in the village, an old man in the village, heard about the hunting expedition, he went out and sat on the edge of the bay and told the sharks to stay away.
Oh,
story.
Oh, that's cute.
You know, when you live here, you could believe that story.
Yeah, right. Oh, I believe that story.
Oh, yeah.
Because my aunt told it to me, and my aunt, all her stories were true.
Well, my grandfather's amakua was a shark, and my mother and aunts would tell stories about how my grandfather would call the shark, and it would come in and chase fish towards his net, and then swim around him like a puppy dog. I mean, I don't know what the truth of it is, but that's what my aunt and my mother would tell me those stories.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fables, I would say, about sharks.
Yes. Yeah. Probably.
The main thing, don't get eaten by one. That's for sure.
I wouldn't personally want to test any of those.
Right.
I believe it.
Carol, do you ever get involved in waters in Hawaii?
Oh yeah, right. I was thinking, I have a friend who, well, there aren't as many fish now to snorkel. I used to love to snorkel, but I have a friend who just a couple weeks ago was swimming where we always swim in Waikiki, and a shark, she saw a shark, and the shark just kind of came up, and then they both went out. There's a passage that the sharks use and another passage that the monk seals use, and they both just swam out, and then the shark swam away. She was just astounded. She's been swimming every day for just years after years and never had that happen. Monk seals, yeah, but not sharks. Yeah, it was really friendly. It was kind of like, I know you, you come here all the time. So, I'll say hello and we can swim out.
Look after the tourists.
Yeah. So it's not all bad. Sharks are actually pretty good.
There was an interesting report on NPR, some kind of discussion about sharks I listened to recently, and it was that the sharks are endangered now.
Oh yeah.
Are they?
Yeah. They all get
yeah.
killed for shark fin soup, and then they get caught in the nets.
They get caught in the, yeah. And the point was made that mostly sharks are not attack animals, not hurt you, that they will just swim away if you don't do anything to aggravate them. But again, I'm not going to test that either. I personally.
I remember taking a trip up the east coast of Florida. We had gone all the way around Florida. We're going back up to Virginia, and looked out in the water, and here were this whole bunch of sharks. I said to Jean, someone's got to notify those people. Well, how intelligent we are. They were dolphins. They weren't sharks.
It's really, really scary are those whale sharks. They're so huge. I was sailing one time and someone said, take the wheel. And I don't really like to do that, but I did. And I looked over to the side, and here was this huge animal about 2 inches under the water. And it was the length of the boat. It was just enormous. And I was like, it was amazing, really. I didn't realize how big they are. I've never seen one again, and I know they're out there.
Are they as, I'll call it ferocious as like the great whites? And
I don't know. I don't think so.
The whale sharks are not man eaters.
No.
What experience have you had, John, with sharks?
Well, I've had a whale shark right alongside our boat.
Yeah.
A couple of occasions, I guess, yeah. But they
kind of swim away or let you fly away, either one.
They're not interested in people to eat. I'm not even sure they eat other fish.
What do they eat?
They may be
plankton.
Grill.
Maybe vegetarians. I don't know.
The really interesting ones are the monk seals, though, because they come in all the time and take over the beach, so you stay away from them. But one of the monk seals pups. They pup on busy beaches, and one of the pups swam into the natatorium, which has a pipe for the ocean to come in and out. And then it got scared and it started barking, and the mother was barking. So everybody assembled, and they finally got the monk seal out of the water, and they put it on a golf cart and they took it away where the mother could find it. But then as soon as the monk seal got back, it swam back into the natatorium, this big pool. And so there it was barking. And so mother managed to squeeze into the pipe, got the pup, and then they came out and they never went back in there again. But it was really exciting. Yeah. They're so big.
Yeah, that's cute.
You have monk seals where you are, Jack?
We see them in front of our house. If you're in Kauai, we see them on the beach in the front of our house. They're endangered species.
Yeah, right.
So the volunteers.
I used to spend a lot of time on Kauai.
Yeah.
Where do you live?
We live in Kapa'a on the east side, right on the ocean edge. But ever since COVID, we used to have a lot of monk seals, but now the tourists are back. And also a lot of people have moved here and brought their dogs, and they let the dogs run free on the beach, so we don't see them very often now. We used to see pups on the beach.
Yeah. That was the best part of COVID.
Yeah. Yes, the reefs look
No
healthy.
traffic and empty beaches. Yeah,
People staying home.
right.
But then you had to too, so.
No, we
That
could
was
go to
okay.
the beach. You know, the beaches were just empty, and so the fish population was rebounded.
Oh
Now
yeah, the
you
fish,
can't
the
go
turtles.
anymore.
Good for them too.
Marge and I had an experience on a Stanford trip years ago. We went down to visit the Gulf of California and up the Pacific coast of Baja California. And we got to the lagoon where the whales birth their calves,
Magdalena Bay.
Mag Bay. And we went out in inflatables to see them. And for the first time ever, the whale mothers were bringing their calves up to be adored by the tourists.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
And here these babies were as long as the inflatable and just as cute as can be. And I've never wiped so much whale snot off my camera lens.
Oh, what an experience.
It was very thrilling. I've never forgotten it. Yeah.
Ever since then, the tour is all advertised that you can pet the whales.
Yeah.
No,
That was the first time ever.
Oh.
I don't think you can pet the whales now.
They don't advertise that, but you can if you're there. But I know I was so thrilled, and everybody was, you know, thrilled and excited. And the guide, the woman, she was shrieking. She was all in Spanish, very excited. And one of the men picked me up and lifted me, so I was kind of not hanging, but I could put my arm down over the edge of this. You know how the Zodiac sticks up?
Yeah.
And they sort of leaned me over so I could touch, and I touched that baby's whale skin, and then they roll and their eyes look at you, and it's like, oh my God, there's somebody there. He's looking at me like I'm looking at him. It was just truly awfully wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a great experience.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a life-changing experience.
It was. I've never forgotten it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another lagoon that the gray whales go for birthing, and that's Scammons, which is on the ocean side from Magdalena Bay.
Oh, yes.
And,
Magdalena Bay is on the ocean, but it's probably up farther or down farther. Mag Bay comes in from the Pacific, and that's where you have to come out and up the coast to get to this place where there's good pupping, good whale babying. Yeah.
John Thorne, you mentioned something about a boat. What's your experience with sailing, whatever?
Oh, you asked for it. Mary Carol and I sailed to the South Pacific in 1981. Spent almost a year in that area. So we went to all the islands between the Marquesas and Fiji. And we saw a lot of sharks, but only one I can remember that ever was aggressive. We were diving on a shallow reef, and the shark saw us and came charging right at us. And then he suddenly realized it went the other direction. Then a few years later, we got a boat in the East Coast and spent 3 years plus cruising the East Coast, the Caribbean, and South America.
Wow. So where is that boat now?
Well, we sold it. We sold it to somebody else back in the East Coast. That was a long time ago now. That was back in the 1990s.
Terry, you mentioned Stanford travel. We had quite an experience flying into Yemen with Stanford, thank goodness. And we were supposed to go up and down the Red Sea and go into Saudi Arabia with a vessel that came up from the Seychelles. And when we got to Sana'a in the middle of the night, they told us we had bad news, that our vessel coming up from Seychelles had been hijacked by Somali pirates.
Oh,
So we didn't have a vessel.
Great.
And Stanford had to arrange a trip through Saudi Arabia in 3 days, which they were able to do instead of taking this vessel. And Stanford did a heck of a job. If it had been with anybody else, we would have had to have gone home. They told anybody who wanted to could go home. One guy went home and he left his crippled wife with us. So we think that he went home because we couldn't have alcohol in Saudi Arabia. And we think he couldn't travel if he didn't have alcohol.
Oh, no.
Thank goodness for Stanford.
Yeah, maybe the wife wanted to get rid of him too.
I think Stanford has that sort of thing happen all the time, and they simply do something about it.
Well, we took that first train from Beijing to Moscow with the Orient, they call it the Ancient Orient Express. And we got stuck at the border of Kazakhstan for 30 hours. And again, Stanford did a heck of a job with it.
Donnie, have you done any Stanford travel?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I've traveled a lot, but I've never done that. I've done most of it. Yeah, I've been a lot of places, but mostly on my own, or on our own, you know, planning. And I've done, you know, the hiking and the whatever. We did the Orient Express, I mean, a long time ago, but yeah, I haven't, I've done a lot of well, now it's called, it was Elder Hostel, and now it's what, Scholastic. Anyway, I've done a lot of that, and I've done, in my old age, I've done Viking, which is, you know, on the river trips in Russia and in Scandinavia. And so, you know, I started out, you know, in the hostels, where you went from hostel to hostel, and then so it's kind of from hostel to Viking. It's a slow procedure of age has dictated most of the travel. When I was young, it was vibrant, and now it's Viking. But it's all good. It's all good. Good. Yeah, when you were talking about the whales down in Magdalena Bay, I did that for one of my children's birthdays, and I felt like they were all Labrador we've always had Labrador retrievers, and they're these whales putting their heads up on the right by the inflatable. I felt like I was surrounded by giant Labradors. But
that's a wonderful description.
anyway, yeah, that's one of the things I regret getting older and being less venturesome. You don't know how you're going to be every day. So I think fondly of all the travels. And but I guess I went the poor man's way. I didn't do the Stanford. They all sounded wonderful. But anyway, yeah, but I've enjoyed, you know, even in my 70s, a friend and I went all through Scotland and Northern England, just using youth hostels, except, you know, we were old, but the youth hostels now, there were many, many adults our age. And it was, you really see the country when you're doing it on trains, buses, and your feet. So it was.
I consider 70s youth.
Yeah, it's all relative.
You know, traveling was so different 20 years ago. There weren't very many people going, so it was so much easier.
Yeah.
And everything, you know, you didn't have to skip the line tickets in Rome and that kind of thing. I don't know, my incentive to go places is not as strong anymore.
No.
And I took people-to-people tours, agricultural tours all over the world. And that was amazing.
Yeah, you'd learn a lot from.
Well, yes, and interesting, we were in Russia, a friend of mine, another farmer's wife, she went. We were rooming together, and one night in Russia, I heard the door open to the room. And so I said, Carolyn, is that you? And the door very quickly closed. It was not. We had some really interesting times.
Well, you can do a good farm tour in Cuba. Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Cuba?
Cuba, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. We went to Cuba in 2000 and then we went again about 4 years ago and took our whole family with us. Had a great time.
Yeah, it's really nice. Did you go to those art cooperatives that they have in different districts of Havana?
Well, we saw an awful lot of art out there because
Yeah.
Sandy Levinson, who runs the Center for Cuban Art in New York City, was our guide. And so she knows all the artists.
Wow.
When it was fascinating because the various neighborhoods or districts like any city would have an art center. So they would have music and the people who lived there would do art and they would, do also, it was just fascinating. It was such a, sort of a local neighborhood art thing. It was wonderful. There were a lot of them.
We had a lot of Cuban pictures here, but when we just moved into this retirement home, we had to get rid of a few of them. Hated to do that because we just loved them.
It's
That's hard.
We did a lot of our traveling later on by making home exchanges in Europe and elsewhere.
Yeah,
Where we
fun
would
thing to do.
stay for 2, 3, even 4 weeks in a particular location and just travel around for a day or so from there. But we got to, meet some of the local residents and so forth. Got to know the cities or the towns.
I was fortunate because several of my children lived in Europe at different times. And so I would go visit them. And that was the way to learn all about the areas.
Yeah.
Walt, have you done some traveling art-wise?
Not largely close to home, work related, whatever. I just wanted, it's great to hear from you. I have to switch to do something else, but I'm delighted that Pat and Marge, you give this opportunity. And also I may be in touch with some of you for items. I'm sure Charlotte's listening too in terms of alumni magazine items, but keep up the good life.
Walter and Charlotte. I want to be sure to thank Walter and Charlotte for taking over when I quit after 42 years as class representative.
Yes.
So it was really great to have somebody take over, and you guys have done a great job. Thank you.
Yes, we're one of the last classes that have our own people doing the column.
That's right. That's
of the older people.
Actually, Jim Madison said to send his greetings. He had a meeting today, and Jake Wellington as well said to say hi to everybody. So I passed those highs on.
Thank you.
May I ask Marge a question?
Yeah.
Marge, this is about the stained glass.
Oh, yeah.
I have in my house in San Francisco stained glass. Now, is that too small for a project for your grant? Was it your parents or your
my father? My father.
Your
Yes.
father.
So he created like entire churches.
Church. Yeah. I see.
Yeah.
Because there a lot of the houses here have that, and well, other places too. But
most of the ones that you'll find in San Francisco probably were done during the early part of the century.
Well,
and of course, he didn't immigrate till 1925. But I mean, he would never, I don't recall that he ever took on any jobs doing homes. It was always entire churches. Yeah.
Well, very often in recent years, there have been churches that have decided to remodel or something, and people have purchased some of the stained glass and now have them in their homes.
Wow.
Oh, that's nice. Well, this
Yeah,
is
his Marge's father's masterpiece is St. Vincent de Paul.
oh,
San
really?
Francisco.
In the marina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and over the years, I've dropped by once in a while just to take a look. And I find people in there who've traveled from all over the world, just sitting in the church, admiring the windows, not because they were Catholic or religious, but just enjoying the art.
Where do you guys live, Marge and Terry?
We live in Menlo Park.
Oh,
Menlo Park, yeah.
Close by. Well, thank you. I love the stained glass, and no baseballs ever went through the windows there.
Well, you know, they're all built with, I mean, they have the glass, that lining, and then the exterior is lined with clear glass to protect it. Like hopefully now unbreakable glass, that sort of thing, to prevent vandalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
My oldest son threw a bean bag through the stained glass window in my house in Britain.
Oh.
And there actually was someone in the little town where we lived who could fix it.
Oh.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, you know, even the worst of accidents can happen. And this happened to me when I was 16, the summer I was 16. And I worked in the studio with my father, and he didn't have a studio with a lot of employees. He was a sole practitioner. And when he had a big job, he would hire some few men, still the old guys that he knew, to help him make windows. But usually if it was a small enough job, he did it himself. So most of these works of art are pretty much a one man, perhaps with 2 or 3 helpers at the very most, which is, you know, truly astonishing. Well, anyway, I was working in the shop, 16 years old, and I was a nice little girl. I was very respectful, and I wasn't being foolish or anything. But my father had, if you can imagine, an aisle going down in the studio. I mean, it was a fairly large studio. And there were work tables, let's say, on either side. And between the 2 work tables was an aisle where you could walk down, right? And my father, the windows, even those huge windows that you see, are all made in sections. So let us say that each section might be 3 feet by 6 feet, maybe something like that. And they'd all be leaded together. And you understand that this lead that holds the pieces together is relatively soft. You can bend it, right? It's not like a brittle piece of steel, it's soft. And so all of this stuff is pieced together, and then there's solders at every joint. So you have this, let us say, a 3 feet by 6 feet section of completed stained glass that has all been soldered, and they're standing like leaves in a book, okay? And I, in my ignorance, pulled one of those leaves aside to look at in between, and didn't realize there's a weight to it and a shift. It's not like a rigid piece, there's almost a flexibility to it. So I pulled it out, and it immediately bent in half, and it fell. I couldn't hold it. It fell to the other side, and it bent in the middle of the aisle, because the aisle wasn't as wide as that whole big standing. And I was, oh my God, what have I done? And my father came, and I thought, oh my God, it was unforgivable what I've done, because here was this 3 feet by 6 feet now bent in kind of in an L shape, right? And that would mean all of the glass at the bend would have been broken, because glass is brittle. The lead bent, but the glass that it was holding, it was brittle. And what did my father say? He said, no problem, no problem. Let me show you what we'll do. So the 2 of us picked it up. He could manage it. He picked it up, he laid it on a big work table, and immediately went to work undoing all of the broken pieces, unleading it, of course. I mean, it took him the rest of the afternoon, getting new glass, cutting the right shape, putting it in, baking, doing whatever, and repairing where I had made that lens. To me, I still remember that moment of horror as I saw what I had done through my absolute, just careless, just not knowing. And my father's reaction, which was, no problem, we'll fix it.
Oh,
That's sweet.
Good story.
That is
Being,
so
being a good
sweet.
father, a good parent, yes.
Pretty cool dad. That's the.
Marge's dad was also the first person to restore windows in the Stanford Chapel.
Oh,
The three west-facing windows in the chapel had sagged because of the heat from the summer on the lead being flexible. And so he hired one of his old cronies who was about 75 years old to give him a hand with the restoration. And he hired me as the Irish laborer. I did all the scaffold building and the extension cord running and that kind of stuff. Anything that didn't require any talent at all.
Over.
And poor Louis Steinmiller spent the whole summer in the old Stanford clock tower, which was just behind the church at that time. And the temperature inside with no air conditioning was about 120 degrees. But it all got done beautifully. And in some of the spaces, to get the color and the texture right, there were as many as 3 individual pieces of glass cut and inserted together.
I wonder if working with all that lead and everything had any effect on their health.
They were very aware of that. And although they didn't wear masks or anything, they washed their hands continuously just to make sure they didn't encounter lead poisoning.
But I have to tell you what I did. How stupid can you be when you're young? So my father was careful of lead, but it was not, not like today where it's like, oh my God, we gotta get rid of all the lead. But when I was working there, you work, glass is sharp, especially you're cutting it, you're doing this and that, it's getting pee. And so I cut my finger, and you can't see it, but to this day, in that little slice of skin, got some lead, right? Lead paint, the paint. And they use lead paint too. And so the paint got in there, and I didn't want to tell my father that I cut my finger because I knew he'd make me wash it out with iodine we used then. And so I didn't tell him, nor did I suck it out clean. I just said, put a Band-Aid on and didn't tell anybody. And I have a nice little piece of lead in there that I've been carrying around for what? 75 years.
Well, it hasn't poisoned you, my friend.
I'm okay.
Most of us carry our lead around in a different location.
Mel Butler, have you had any experience with stained glass or boats or sharks or anything like that? Mel?
Who, me?
Yes.
I have about 1,500 dives all over the world, and with sharks, but nobody ever scared me at all. They were a little ways away, and they were not the sharks that like people. But I dived in the Pacific a lot. I had a good time doing that.
Wow, that's a lot of dives.
It was my avocation.
Oh, really? Tell us more.
Where did you do that?
I did it initially on the West Coast here, and then I went to Hawaii once, and I went to Truck Lagoon a couple of times, and we flew over and destroyed the Japanese port there, and then went to other places too. Really an interesting time.
Was it just for observation, or were you looking for abalone or crabs
No.
or fish?
We didn't, along the coast, we got for abalone, but now there's no abalone left. It's illegal to get them now, but in Hawaii and other places, we just looked. No spearfishing out there. I did a lot of spearfishing on the coast, and one time I had a little fish right in front of me. I was going to see him, and he looked at me like, "No, don't do that." And I never did it again. I couldn't do it after that.
John, have you done any diving?
Nothing spectacular, but we learned to dive in Hawaii after we moved there, and we would dive on occasion, not mainly when we went someplace and chartered a boat or in our own boat, and we didn't own all the dive gear, so we had to rent it to wherever we went. We did go down this one blue hole in the Caribbean that was interesting. It was about a diameter of maybe 6 to 10 feet and went straight down, and got a little crowded in there, but we didn't really see very much. It was just an unusual experience.
I dived in the blue hole in the Caribbean, and it went about 400 feet deep, and we went to about 165 feet. It was clear as can be, not a fish at all in there, and it was an interesting dive. Did it once, that's all.
Yeah, that's all you do. You do it once, and that's enough.
When I was in medical school in San Francisco at Stanford, then Bill McIver and I used to go out on weekends, abalone driving, free diving, and see, they were all over the place then, and they're not available now at all. So sad.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
We had
what
a
has
pretty
changed
epic
now?
trip once. We decided to go down the backside of Molokai because there's almost nothing over there on the backside. And so we went over, and there were two guys, Rusty Lillicoy and Gary Budlong, who one had a dive shop and the other had a bar. And so there were about 6 of us, I guess it was, and we headed out, and the waves, we were out this big, and the waves got pretty high. And one of the women was a friend of mine, and she was kind of portly, and suddenly she started saying, "Big fish, big fish, big fish." Well, a shark came along and took about a foot of, ripped about a foot of the Zodiac.
Ooh.
So, yeah, so the guys picked her up and put her in another canoe. And then this one, was a double canoe. So it would stay afloat enough since it didn't have any baggage anymore. So Rusty and Gary said, "Oh, we know where everything's going to be. We know where the currents go." So, my poor friend who was in that double canoe, he paddled away. We finally got there, and they put the canoe back or the Zodiac back with duct tape and fiberglass. And because the only thing we could do was to go all the way down the coast in the Zodiac with it. And so it was a terrific trip, worked out really well. It was good fun, but what an adventure the first day. We weren't very experienced with Zodiacs.
Wow.
Wow.
Would you explain a Zodiac?
Oh, a Zodiac, I don't know. I don't know any
Big
real,
rubber.
maybe somebody else knows some good terms. I just see them as a big rubber
The ones
boat.
that they always use on those trips, yeah.
It's a big
Yeah.
rubber inflatable,
Yeah.
It's inflatable, yeah.
and it's
How
got
big
two.
is it? How big?
It could be
Oh.
like 20
They
feet
vary.
by
Come in
10,
different sizes.
Yeah,
maybe 8
Don?
by 20. 8 by 20, you think?
yeah. Well, the middle part was big enough for 2 people.
Yeah.
And then we had all the luggage and everything,
Well, some of them
roped on.
hold 10 or 12 people, so.
Yeah. Well, no, these were 1 or 2 men. So yeah.
Oh.
Oh, they're
Okay,
bigger.
smaller.
But the waves were huge,
Yeah.
It was really a good fun trip because we camped on, you know, the other side of Molokai for a while.
I've used Zodiacs a lot on river trips. The Rogue River in Oregon, they're,
Okay.
anyway, river trips, use, that's all that, well, that's what they use. That or kayaks. I've done kayaks. I own kayaks, but the Zodiacs, and then I've used them up in the Queen Charlotte Islands, all that. We're on a sailboat, but then we use Zodiacs to do the tide pools. And Zodiacs are pretty comfortable on I've done the, you know, I forget what it's called, the dangerous part of the road. And they go up over everything very well.
So here's a picture of a Zodiac.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much see the front end. It's a big rubber tube all the way around. And this one's got like whatever, 8 people in it. And
they're really very nice.
Yeah.
Well, you know, these weren't any, these were smaller. They looked more like canoes, you know, but they were rubber inflatables.
Well, I had an experience with that once. Nothing like international travel, nothing like ocean, but we were trucking down the Truckee.
Yeah.
And we
that's a Zodiac.
We had one that had the kids and a couple of other people, and Gene and I were in one, just the 2 of us. And we got down to this place where the river swept around, and then there was this rock. And you've seen cartoons where people are in their boat are sitting on top of the rock and they're paddling. That was us.
Oh my gosh. Does our session go for another half hour?
I think it goes as long as people want to go.
Yeah, I have to go. I have a house guest that arrived at 6 in the morning, and then she took a few hours off, and then suddenly, I joined this, and so I really have to get off and go see.
Good seeing you, Carol.
I'm going to say goodbye too.
I'm going to say goodbye too. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
wonderful to see everybody.
Thank you for
all of you.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Thanks for having it.
Thank you.
Thank you for arranging. It's wonderful.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Are you going to give us a goodbye?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Give us a blessing before we go?
Bye-bye, everybody.
What, Patty?
Bill's going to give us a blessing.
Yep, Bill's he's ready to go.
Let's go.
Okay.
Okay. Make aloha, Maoloa, class of 1953. Eke aku o kalani, e ho mai ka aka mai, e ho mai ka ola pilikia, e ho mai a ola pono, e ke akua malama maoloa o hui 1953, malama maoloa, malama maoloa, class of 1953. Aloha, everyone.
Oh, thank you.
Smile.
Okay, take care.
Someday you'll tell us what that means.
Can't go away.
Mahalo New York.
Aloha, everyone.
Bye-bye. I'll wait until you all say goodbye.
Good to see everyone.
Good seeing you, John. Good seeing you, Bill.
Goodbye.